I should have known something was wrong when my mother's hands trembled as she handed me the envelope. It was wrapped like a Christmas miracle. Shiny silver paper, a red satin bow tied just right, and yet something in her eyes said it wasn't joy she was trying to contain. It was fear. I turned 35 that morning. I'd woken early to prepare everything myself, the lemon vanilla cake, the fresh flowers from the garden, the handwritten place cards. The old wooden house on Beechwood Avenue, with its creaking floorboards and lavender-framed windows, had never felt warmer. I had spent 5 years restoring it, scrubbing every brick by hand, repainting shutters, replacing panes cracked from time and weather. This house wasn't just a shelter, it was my legacy, my heart, a home carved from dust and dedication. The party was small. Just my parents, my brother Daniel, a few uncles, and Ivy, always Ivy, my cousin, wrapped in some designer cocktail dress, smiling like she belonged on the cover of a glossy magazine, not in my modest sunroom sipping sangria. But even her presence couldn't ruin the calm I'd built here. At least, that's what I thought. "Olivia, open your gift," my mom said, voice cheerful and just a little too high-pitched. "This one's really special." I smiled, oblivious. Everyone laughed and chatted as I undid the bow, peeled back the foil wrapping, and pulled out a thick envelope. Inside, stack of papers. I scanned the first line and felt my breath catch. Eviction notice. The room went silent. My fingers froze midair, a tremor starting in my wrist. "What is this?" I whispered. My father looked down, his jaw clenched. My mother blinked rapidly and avoided my eyes. Daniel stepped back like he didn't want to be caught in the blast radius. And Ivy smiled, but not the sweet, airy smile she wore in family photos. No, this was something sharper, something that said, "I win." "Olivia," my mother began, "we know today isn't ideal, but it's time we were honest." I stood up. The chair scraped across the wooden floor with a screech. "This is my house. I rebuilt this place brick by brick. Every board, every nail, my hands, my money." Ivy stood slowly, setting down her wine glass. "But the deed is still under Aunt Rachel and Uncle Ted's name," she said lightly. "Legally, it's never been yours." I stared at her. "You knew? You planned this with them." "I'm helping the family make a smart decision," she said, smoothing the silk on her hip. "This neighborhood's hot. It's the right time to sell." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. So this was the big surprise? A birthday gift wrapped in betrayal. No one answered. The silence was suffocating. I could smell the vanilla frosting, still lingering in the air like a lie that hadn't settled. My mother stepped forward, voice soft. "You have 45 days to get things in order. We'll help with moving costs if you—" I yanked my hand back. "I don't need anything from you. I need answers. How long have you been planning this?" Ivy didn't flinch. 3 months. I've already spoken with a few investors. The lot is sizable. Prime location. It makes sense. "This house," I said, voice cracking, "is not just some lot. It's mine. Every part of it is me." Daniel finally spoke. "Liv, maybe you should calm down. We can talk." "No," I snapped. "No more later. I want the truth now." But there was only silence again, a room full of people who had known me my whole life, now suddenly strangers in my home. "Get out," I said, the words ice cold. "All of you. Out of my house." My mother gasped. My father looked away. Daniel hesitated. "Ivy," she didn't even blink. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, walking slowly toward the door. "And you just made me lose all faith in family." I followed her to the entryway. "Funny," I said, voice low. "I was just thinking the same thing." As the door clicked shut behind her, I was left standing in the hallway with nothing but the papers in my hand and the echo of betrayal in my chest. I didn't cry. Not then. Not even after the last guest left. I just stood there, breathing shallowly, staring at the gold-framed photo on the wall. The day I signed the renovation permits, The day I believed this house would finally be mine. That night, the house felt colder than it had in years. Not from the weather. The spring breeze outside was soft, even fragrant with lilacs, but from the silence that had swallowed the walls whole. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the sound of forks against plates, all of it had vanished, leaving only the ticking of the clock in the hallway and the eviction notice on my kitchen table, staring up at me like a wound that wouldn't close. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the armchair by the bay window, arms wrapped around myself, eyes dry but wide. Every creak in the floor felt like a betrayal. Every shadow on the wall felt like a ghost of someone who had once cared. This wasn't just about a house. It was about everything I had poured into it. 5 years of hauling lumber, of negotiating with inspectors, of painting until my fingers cramped, and now they wanted me gone. Like I was just a tenant overstaying her welcome in a place that had always been mine in every way, but legally. And Ivy had smiled, not nervously, not regretfully. She had smiled like it was a triumph, like she had finally crossed a finish line no one else even knew she was racing toward. That smile wouldn't leave me. I replayed everything, every comment she'd made over the past few months about property values skyrocketing, about how much developers would pay for a lot this size. I thought she was just making conversation, maybe even jealous, but now it all felt like clues, or worse, warnings I ignored. I reached for my phone and called the only person I knew I could trust with everything, Emma. She picked up on the third ring, her voice groggy but alert. "Liv, it's late. What's wrong?" "I need you," I said. "Can you come tomorrow? Bring your laptop and that stack of renovation permit files, if you still have them." "Of course," she said immediately, no questions asked. "I'll be there." The next morning, Emmy arrived with a full backpack, hair still damp from her shower, eyes burning with protective fire. She hugged me tight before stepping inside, her gaze immediately landing on the documents still splayed across the table. "Eviction?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't speak. She just sat down, opened her laptop, and began sorting through digital folders with the precision of a surgeon. Within minutes, she had pulled up scans of every permit, inspection sign-off, and city approval we'd ever filed together during the renovations. "These are solid," she said. "All approved. All logged. You're clean." Then how did they convince my parents otherwise? I asked. Emma scrolled through more folders. Ivy must have shown them something. Maybe forged complaints or faked permit denials. I blinked. Complaints! She did say the neighbors were unhappy. Said someone filed a noise complaint. Said I'd never told the city I was redoing the load-bearing walls. Emma looked up. "And did you?" "Of course I did. We got city clearance for everything." Emma tapped her keyboard. "If she's showing your parents fake documents, then this isn't just family drama anymore. It's fraud." I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. What if Ivy had actually gone that far? What if this wasn't just about pushing me out, but about erasing me entirely from what I'd built? I grabbed my phone again. This time, I typed slowly, deliberately. The message was to my brother. "Daniel, we need to talk. Urgently. Meet me tomorrow, 8 a.m., Cornerstone Cafe. Please come alone." His reply came a few minutes later. "Okay." I set the phone down and looked at Emma. "If Daniel knows anything, I need to hear it from him." Emma nodded. "And if he doesn't, then we'll show him what Ivy doesn't want anyone to see." Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the curtains and carrying with it the distant scent of cut grass. But in the kitchen, all I could smell was fear. Fear that I was already too late. Fear that everything Ivy wanted to take was already in her hands. The cafe was half empty when I arrived the next morning, the smell of burnt espresso lingering faintly in the air. I picked a seat by the window facing the street. My tea sat untouched. I didn't want caffeine. I wanted answers. At exactly 8:03, Daniel walked in. He looked like he hadn't slept, his collar wrinkled, eyes red. He spotted me and offered a nod, not a smile. That alone told me everything I needed to know. He sat across from me without a word. I slid a manila folder toward him. Before I ask anything, look at these. He opened it slowly. Inside were copies of every permit Emma had pulled the night before. Approved, signed, dated. He flipped through the first few pages, then paused at a blueprint we'd submitted 3 years ago. His eyes traced the signature from the city inspector. His lips pressed into a thin line. So, she lied to me too, he murmured. I didn't respond. I just watched his face, waiting. After a long silence, Daniel exhaled long and low. 2 weeks ago, Ivy told Mom and Dad you didn't file your paperwork properly, that you bypassed safety inspections. Said she had complaints from neighbors. She showed them something, looked official. I didn't think to question it. I leaned in, and you just believed her. She had documents, he snapped, then lowered his voice. She said if the city found out, the house could be seized, that you might be charged for unsafe construction. And you didn't think to ask me? I asked, quieter now. You didn't think to give me one chance to explain? Daniel looked down. I didn't know what to believe. She's persuasive. She kept saying it was for your own good, that she was protecting the family, protecting them by kicking me out of the home I rebuilt. He didn't answer, but guilt was all over his face. I took a breath. This isn't just about my house anymore. She's planning something bigger. He frowned. What do you mean? I think she's trying to sell it, not to keep for herself, to flip it, or worse, tear it down and replace it with a development. Daniel's jaw tightened. You think she's working with someone? I nodded. Max Harper. He blinked. Her boyfriend? I've never met him, but Dad mentioned he's into real estate. Exactly. Emma and I are digging deeper, and we're finding holes in every single thing Ivy has told you. I need your help, Daniel. If Mom and Dad believed her because of fake documents, then I need proof to undo the damage. Daniel rubbed his temples. All right, I'm with you. Better late than never. Later that afternoon, Emma and I sat cross-legged on my living room floor, laptops and files spread around us like a war table. She was texting furiously with someone, Chloe, her former college classmate, now working at the city's land records office. Chloe had access to all construction, permit filings, and neighborhood complaints in the Asheville district. She agreed to meet us, Emma said. Public library, 3rd floor archives, 7 p.m. She'll bring what she can. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, we stepped into the quiet library. Chloe was already waiting, her messenger bag overstuffed, her eyes sharp with curiosity and concern. She led us to a side table and pulled out a thick file. This, she said, flipping it open, is the petition supposedly filed by a neighbor complaining about unauthorized renovations. This is what Ivy would have used if she wanted to scare your family into acting. She paused. But here's the problem. There's no original. No case number. No entry in the system. I stared at her. Meaning this is either a fabrication or a manipulation of another document entirely. And look here. She tapped the name listed as the complainant. This person doesn't exist in the Willow Street registry. Emma's eyes lit up. This is forgery. I felt a chill ripple down my spine. We were no longer just dealing with lies or emotional manipulation. Ivy had crossed into something far more dangerous, something criminal. The following day, Daniel arranged a meeting with someone he knew from the city's planning office, Marcus Bell, a mid-level official who had worked with zoning and development approvals for years. Marcus was cautious, the kind of man who chose his words like chess moves. But once he saw the forged documents Emma and Chloe had uncovered, his eyebrows furrowed in something close to alarm. We met him in a quiet office on the 5th floor of a city administration building that smelled faintly of old paper and linoleum. He reviewed the files with a slow, deliberate rhythm, his finger tracing Ivy's fake complaint letter, the fake inspection notice, and the notary seal at the bottom of the supposed land survey. Then he pushed his glasses higher and said quietly, "This is strange. I've seen this version before." I leaned forward. "Where?" He turned to his desktop, typing quickly. It was in a closed-door meeting. 3 weeks ago, presented as part of a proposed development package. Emma and I exchanged a glance. My chest tightened. Marcus clicked into a restricted file, then spun the monitor toward us. On the screen was a project proposal with a sleek, minimal logo at the top, Harper and Stone Group. Project name, Willow Heights. Proposed construction, luxury apartment complex. Location, 197 Beechwood Avenue. I stopped breathing for a moment. That was my address. My house. Emma whispered, "They weren't just trying to sell it. They've already pitched the rebuild." I tried to steady my voice. "Do they have signatures?" "From the current owners." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "There's a land survey approval form here. Signed by Richard and Elaine Rickman. My parents." My voice cracked. Did they know what they were signing? "Depends," Marcus said. "The document looks official, but the notary seal Elizabeth Sterling. That name rings a bell." Emma leaned closer. "Sterling? Isn't that Ivy's last name?" I nodded slowly. "That's her mother. Her real mother. She used to be a notary, but she retired almost 2 years ago." Marcus pulled out a magnifier. "If this stamp was applied recently and she's not a licensed notary anymore, then this document could be invalid. Worse, it could be illegal." The room went still. It was suddenly very clear. This wasn't just a matter of family betrayal or a pushy cousin trying to make a quick buck. This was premeditated property fraud, a forged plan orchestrated behind closed doors, tied directly to my cousin, her boyfriend, and now my parents' unknowing signatures. We left Marcus's office just after 4 p.m. The spring sky outside had darkened with low-hanging clouds. As we drove back toward Beechwood Avenue, a drizzle began tapping against the windshield, soft, steady like the ticking of a clock. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping the folder Marcus had printed for me. My house was on that page. Its footprint, its dimensions, its future, redrawn by people who didn't build it, didn't love it, didn't bleed into it like I had. As we passed the Beechwood Historic District sign, I knew what I had to do. I turned to Emma, my voice low but steady. "If Ivy thinks she's smarter than me, if she thinks I'll walk away from this house without a fight, she doesn't know me at all." Emma glanced sideways, a faint smile pulling at her lips. "Then let's make sure she never forgets." We pulled into my driveway just as the rain began to fall harder, tapping against the roof in quick succession like a rising heartbeat. I looked up at my house, the windows glowing warmly through the mist. It was still standing, and so was I. But something told me, after tonight, the storm was only just beginning. It was nearly midnight when I heard it, the sharp crack of something striking the front porch, followed by the faint thud as it rolled to a stop. I had been in the kitchen, microwaving leftover soup I hadn't touched all day. The noise froze me in place. I turned off the microwave, heart pounding, and walked to the front door. There, lying against the doormat, was a rock wrapped in brown paper. No envelope, no stamp, just a single line scrawled in black marker across the surface. "Back off while you still can, Olivia." My blood ran cold. I looked around, heart racing, but the street outside was empty. The rain had stopped, and fog hovered over the pavement like a veil. Porch lights from nearby homes glowed faintly behind drawn curtains. No movement, no witnesses. I picked up the rock with shaking hands and locked the door behind me. The silence inside my home, once comforting, now pressed down on me like a weight. By the time the police arrived 20 minutes later, Emma and Daniel were already on their way. 2 officers examined the rock and took my statement. They advised me to install security cameras and log any further incidents. One of them, a woman maybe in her 40s, gave me a long, sympathetic look before leaving. This isn't just a scare tactic, she said. Whoever left this, they want you to know they're watching. She was right. This had gone far beyond family tensions or business ambition. This was a campaign, a psychological siege. And if Ivy thought fear would make me fold, she'd severely misjudged who I'd become. When Emma and Daniel arrived, I showed them the note. Emma swore under her breath. Daniel clenched his fists. I'll talk to Mom, he said. Right now. He stepped out into the hallway, phone already to his ear. I watched his back as he paced, the conversation muffled, tense. When he returned, his face was pale. She gave Ivy a key last week, he said. Said Ivy needed to take measurements for her engagement party. She didn't think anything of it. My stomach twisted. So Ivy had access to everything. Daniel nodded. But now Mom's suspicious. She heard something in Ivy's voice tonight. Something cold. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly heavy. It's too late. She's already in motion. That night, I didn't sleep again. Instead, I sat with Emma by the fireplace, just like we used to during exam season in college. Papers and laptops spread across the floor, candles flickering in the corners of the room. We combed through everything. Blueprints, city filings, inspection stamps, and then we moved on to the notary seal. The one bearing the name Elizabeth Sterling. Emma pulled up the state notary registry and searched. She's not active, she confirmed. Retired 2 years ago. She shouldn't be signing anything. We stared at the digital record. Her name, her license ID, the red inactive badge beside it. There it was, the first piece of undeniable legal fraud. I need to speak with Sarah, I said, reaching for my phone. Sarah Holden had been my attorney for years, helped me navigate permits, taxes, even some contract work when I first bought the house. But this time I didn't need her as an advisor. I needed her as a strategist. When she answered, I didn't waste time. Sarah, I have forged documents, a notary seal from a retired official, fake permits, fake signatures. My house is being targeted. There was a pause on the other end. Then, come in. First thing tomorrow. Bring everything. The next morning, I sat across from her desk, sunlight pouring through her office window, illuminating the stack of folders between us like a spotlight on a stage. This is serious, Sarah said after reading. Ivy's not just manipulating your family. She's committing fraud. And if Max is involved, this could implicate Harper and Stone too. She tapped a pen against the desk. We need to build a timeline. Fake documents, illegal notarization, plans to demolish, links to development companies, motive, opportunity, and access. I stared at the timeline unfolding before me, each piece pointing not to coincidence, but to orchestration. My cousin hadn't just lied. She'd planned this from the very start, and now it was time to show everyone what she'd done. I wasn't expecting her, not at my door, not on a rainy Thursday afternoon when my world felt like it had narrowed to lawsuits, timelines, and surveillance cameras. But there she was, Lena Harper, standing on my porch in a gray trench coat, her expression unreadable. I hadn't seen Lena in years. The last time, she'd been a quiet presence at a family barbecue, trailing behind Max like a shadow. She was the kind of woman who kept her thoughts to herself, the observer in a room full of talkers. But now she looked different, sharper, purposeful. I know what they're doing, she said before I could even greet her. And I want to help. I blinked. Why would you? She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the handle of her umbrella. Because I used to believe in Max. I thought he was building something real, something honest. But Harper and Stone, it's just a front now. Image, greed, power. He and Ivy, her voice caught, they don't care who they hurt. They think no one will stand up to them. But I will, if you'll let me. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. In my living room, under the soft hum of a table lamp, Lena laid out what she'd brought. A thick printout of the event plan for Ivy's engagement party, internal company memos, and most shockingly, a USB drive. Ivy's rearranged the guest list, Lena said. You're not on it. She thinks you'll stay quiet. That you've lost. I laughed bitterly. She always did think I was too sentimental to fight back. Well, this time, you'll be the one with the mic. The USB, she explained, contained a recorded conversation between Ivy and Max, one that Lena had overheard and secretly saved from a company Zoom meeting Max had left open on his laptop. Ivy said, and I quote, "Let them think Olivia's breaking the law. Once the house loses its legal protection, we can buy it for pennies. After the party, everything will be ours." I sat back in stunned silence. Emma, who'd just returned with takeout, nearly dropped the bags. Lena reached into her folder again. There's more. Internal emails, meeting transcripts. Max even created a dummy shell company to purchase the lot in case anyone traced it back. It's all here. I glanced at Sarah, who had joined us on speaker from her office. If we reveal this at the party, will it hold up? Sarah's voice came steady through the line. If we frame it correctly, yes. We don't need to convict them in the room. We just need to reveal the truth, and then let the right authorities do their work. Emma leaned forward, tapping the guest list Lena had provided. Then we make it theatrical. A reveal they can't spin their way out of. Lights, screens, audio. Lena nodded. I'll get you in. I've already seen the floor plan of the Bellevue Grand's ballroom. There's a service entrance near the projection booth, and Ivy's too obsessed with herself to notice a familiar face in the crowd. We spent the next 48 hours preparing everything down to the second. Emma edited a short video, part visual evidence, part voiceover of Ivy's own words. Sarah drafted a dossier with hard copies of every document. Lena coached me on where to stand, when to speak, and how to hold their attention just long enough for the truth to sink in. The night before the party, I opened a dusty jewelry box tucked in the back of my closet. Inside was my grandmother's pearl necklace, delicate, timeless. I hadn't worn it in years. I clipped it on with shaking hands, staring at my reflection in the mirror. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about redemption, about showing everyone, especially myself, that I was never the problem. They were. The Bellevue Grand Hotel gleamed like a cathedral of wealth and ego. Chandeliers sparkled overhead like frozen fireworks, and the marble floors beneath my heels seemed too perfect to touch. Laughter echoed through the arched hallways as flutes of champagne were raised, compliments were traded, and Ivy stood radiant at the center of it all, draped in a shimmering white gown that screamed status more than love. I stayed near the back at first, blending into the crowd with the help of a dark satin dress and my grandmother's pearls. Lena had slipped me in through the service entrance 30 minutes earlier. She stood near the projection booth now, hand hovering over the clicker, waiting for my signal. Across the room, Max held Ivy's hand like a man who believed he'd already won. I stepped toward the stage as a violin quartet wrapped up their final notes. A waiter passed by. Someone clapped politely. Ivy raised a glass, her eyes scanning for her next moment in the spotlight. I gave it to her. "Excuse me," I said, stepping onto the stage. The microphone felt cold in my hand, heavier than it should have. "I'd like to say a few words." A few heads turned. Murmurs sparked. Ivy's smile faltered for just a second. "This isn't a toast," I continued. "It's a truth. About this party. About this couple. About a house at 197 Beechwood Avenue that was nearly stolen through forged documents, fraudulent notarizations, and a scheme that's been building for months." Gasps rippled through the room. Someone in the back laughed nervously. Ivy's face froze, then tightened. Max moved, but I raised a hand. "Let's let the evidence speak for itself." Lena dimmed the lights. The large screen behind me flickered on. First came images of my home. The bricks I laid, the garden I planted, the old shutters I restored by hand. Then came the documents, overlaid with red markers. False permit rejections, the invalid notary seal, the land survey signed by my parents with a date that didn't match any record in the city's database. Then the audio. Ivy's voice crackled through the speakers. Crystal clear. Let them think Olivia's breaking the law. Once the house loses legal protection, we can buy it for next to nothing. After the engagement party, everything will be in our hands. Max's voice followed. Calm, confident. I've cleaned out all the internal files. No one will trace it back. Silence fell. Then came the voice of Randall Morris, the lead investor in the Harper and Stone development. He stood up, voice cutting through the hush. Are these real? I nodded, handing him the dossier Sarah had prepared. They're verified. Copies have been submitted to the Department of Planning, the Notary Licensing Office, and the police. The next moment happened in slow motion. 2 plainclothes officers stepped into the ballroom. One walked up to Ivy. Miss Sterling, he said calmly, you are under investigation for document forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. We ask for your cooperation. The crowd erupted in gasps. Max's hand dropped from Ivy's waist. She turned to me, eyes wild. You set me up. No, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. I didn't look away as she was escorted from the room. Across the crowd, I saw my parents. They had arrived late, but just in time to see everything. My mother's face was pale. My father didn't move. I walked toward them slowly, pearls resting against my collarbone, heart thudding but steady. I'm sorry you had to see it like this, I said, but without the truth, I'd always be the villain in your eyes. My mother stepped forward and reached for my hand. Her voice cracked. Olivia, I had no idea. We believed her. We didn't know. I know, I whispered. But now you do. I turned away before I could cry, walking slowly through the golden light of the chandelier-filled room. My heels echoed across marble as the doors closed behind me, and with them, so did everything Ivy had ever tried to take. 6 weeks after the engagement party, spring returned to Beechwood Avenue like a quiet apology. The cherry trees lining the sidewalk had begun to bloom, their petals drifting across porches and fences like pieces of forgotten lace. The lavender I planted years ago had pushed through winter's stubborn frost, blooming in tight purple clusters beneath the bay window. My house was still standing, and so was I. The aftermath came in waves. The media moved on quickly after Ivy's arrest. Prominent real estate heiress under investigation for fraud was good for 1 news cycle, maybe 2. Her sentence, a suspended term paired with community service and a formal disbarment from any notary involvement, felt underwhelming. But it wasn't about the punishment anymore. It was about what she couldn't take. Max was quietly ousted from Harper and Stone. Investors pulled out. The company's expansion plans were shelved indefinitely. Lena, true to her word, submitted her resignation and joined a group of local preservationists, launching a fund to protect historic homes in Asheville. She visited often, sometimes with blueprints, sometimes just with coffee and a quiet smile. One afternoon she brought something more, a small bronze plaque. I stared at it for a long moment. My throat tightened. Recognized by the Asheville Historical Preservation Society, it read, "For restoration, dedication, and contribution to the living memory of the city." "This place isn't just yours anymore," Lena said softly. "It belongs to everyone who believes in rebuilding what matters." I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded. A week later, I hosted my first real gathering since the party, a backyard dinner with string lights, wooden tables, and the few people who had stood beside me when it counted. Emma, Lena, Chloe, Marcus, even Daniel, who showed up with a bottle of wine and eyes still heavy with regret. We laughed. We passed plates. We stayed long after the candles had burned down, wrapped in light blankets, watching the stars blink through the trees. For the first time in what felt like years, there was peace. And later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone on the front steps, barefoot, hair undone, a mug of tea cooling in my hands. The breeze was soft. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, restful. I looked out over the yard, across every brick, every window frame, every familiar shadow that now felt like a memory stitched back together. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it no longer owned me. A few days after, I got a visit I didn't expect. Max. He stood at my gate in a plain button-down and jeans, his hair unstyled, his posture small. I didn't invite him in. I lost everything, he said quietly. I didn't take it from you, I replied. He nodded. I know. There was a long pause. I'm trying to start over, he continued. Somewhere far from Ivy. Far from all of it. I don't expect forgiveness. But if there's any chance to support what you and Lena are building, I want to. I studied him for a long moment. Then I said, not because I forgive you, but because I believe everyone deserves a chance to start over if they're willing to begin from zero. We shook hands. That was all. No closure. No second chances. Just space. I watched him leave, his figure growing smaller beneath the branches overhead. Then I turned back toward the house, my house, still warm with the scent of lilacs and paint and memory. The place where I had once read by the window as a child, and where I now sat as a woman who had reclaimed every piece of herself. Some people inherit homes. Others fight to keep them. Me, I rebuilt mine, and no one would ever take that from me again.